This is the Slots and Sockets podcast. I am one of your windswept hosts, IRD Moose, and my partner in crime,
Turbo Penguin.
Hey, happy Wednesday, Turbo. So we're a little bit late recording this show this week. Life things have been happening, as per usual. You might notice the little display shelf behind me is barren, which means there will be a change of setting coming soon. So we might be a little bit weird on our recording schedule, but I just wanted to get that out there in case anybody gets worried or misses us. If you do miss us, give us a like and a subscribe and go watch one of our older episodes. We got some good content in there too. But Turbo and I have been kind of watching the news during our impromptu hiatus, if you will. And there have been some really interesting things coming out, particularly in the CPU space.
Yeah, so CPU, you got 9900 and 9950 X3D.
Yep.
So an expansion of the 9000 series CPUs.
Which we've known about since, November?
Yeah,
So
this isn't a surprise. They've always kind of had a target for this. So there's not much really there. That's AMD, even in their discussion, was pretty open about what these were looking like.
mhm.
So we got reviews, and it's as good as I think a lot of people thought.
In a lot of ways, it sounds like it's better than people thought.
For the right use case. So what I want to push out here is that if you're a gamer, necessarily this is not purely a gaming CPU. It will play games very well. It is fastest. It is expensive. And it's a couple of hit points faster than the 9800 X3D.
Yep.
But where this CPU really shines is when you've got somebody who has the use for needing 16 cores, 32 threads, but then also wanting to play those video games.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big thing that we're going to be looking at is to, for someone who's a streamer, this is going to be a really good CPU where you can do both your streaming and your game live. That's going to be really good. Content creators that play video games, that's going to be really good. Something where you have dual purpose, because this is a very good gaming CPU.
Yep.
And this is a very good content creation CPU.
Yeah.
And so if you have a use for both of those on the same machine, this is your CPU. If you're just a gamer, unless you're really like trying to get that extra, chasing, raw performance, the 9800 X3D is probably the best. But, the thing is, the 9800 X3D is, I think right now you can get it for $450, $460, like somewhere in that range. It's not a cheap CPU, but comparative to a $700 9950 X3D, it is substantially cheaper.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting. You notice that there's not a lot of 9900 X3D videos. And that's on purpose, because I think a lot of the people will look at that and say, okay, so you're going to have fewer cores with 3D cache. Like, where's the use case in that for $100 cheaper?
Yeah.
And so I just think that, it's kind of like the 9800X, the 9700, the 9070 XT versus not XT. I think it's so close price wise. It's like for $100, it's kind of silly to get the lower card or the lower chip at this point. So
yeah, I think in that situation, if you're really budget constrained and you want to get more memory or maybe go up a tier in a graphics card or something like that, I think there might be a use case for a 9900 X3D if you're trying to get into streaming and stuff like that. But to your point, for the vast majority of gamers, I would 100% recommend the 9800X3D 7 days a week and twice on Sunday. The 9950, if you've got the money to go for it, like a couple people I know where just money doesn't really matter and they just want the best of the best, go for it. If you're, like you said, if you're streaming or doing some sort of content creation, or, potentially even doing VMs for your gaming, because that is starting to become a thing where people are virtualizing their systems because a lot of games these days are using kernel level anti-cheat and potentially opening up not so good things to your PC. Um, and being able to virtualize that in a VM with this kind of CPU is hugely helpful. Now the question is, would the virtualization work properly with game detection, stuff like that? That I don't know. I would guess they pretty much got it handled at this point. But a good example of a person who does that is Mutahar. He some ordinary gamers. He virtualizes everything on top of Arch Linux, and yeah, he's nuts. He's crazy. He's a security guy, but he also does a lot of content creation, does a lot of stuff on the side where he could actually use the horsepower of a 9950. So, my take on it, if you're an average gamer, go with the 9800 unless you have that need to, blast through a render while you're playing Fortnite with your friends at the same time or, whatever.
So interestingly enough, when we're talking about CPUs,
Mhm.
two things that I wanted to bring up because it gets us talking about CPUs rather than graphics cards.
Sure.
Once again, just bring up the point. Um, Core Ultra 9 285K, completely missing in pretty much every aspect.
I think
Like I
at
can't
this
buy it at
point,
Micro Center.
yeah.
You can apparently buy it from Amazon. They have 7 left at $619.
Mhm.
I'm just really, again, kind of, there is something funky going on because it's like, not only was it a paper launch without anything, but I mean, we're months in and you struggle to find it with Dell and HP and like the big names that have been very much into Intel.
Mhm.
And in fact, it goes the other way. Now, the 265K you do see, but the 285 is surprisingly missing in action.
Mhm.
And one of the things we're seeing is they've gone back, they've had some microcode updates trying to make this better. And in a number of cases, it's actually seen a regression of moving down a chart with other CPUs who have gained performance.
Yep.
And so, very interesting that Intel is non-existent. And also, while we're talking about Intel, there's rumors that TSMC is looking to get some people together to put together a partnership to basically take over Intel foundries.
That would be interesting. I think with some of the stuff Intel works on for the US government, that might not fly. Um, so it's
Well, but they're
possible
look
it's
at who
possible
they're
that might get spun
approaching.
off.
Well, guess who they're looking at? Nvidia,
Yep.
US company, Broadcom, US
Broadcom.
company, and
Yep.
TSMC, which is South Korean, which is
Taiwanese.
Taiwanese, which is close to, and TSMC has built fabs here in United States. So it would go to show that if you built it where each of them had a third,
Mhm.
ownership, and you do need the expertise of TSMC really to get that sorted off from a foundry perspective. Um, the question is like, is this TSMC like as a way to solidify their US piece? But I wonder if they see benefit in picking up some of these foundries. But very interesting. That's something that's going to change over the next little bit. It'll be interesting to see if Intel can avoid splitting up the company.
Mm-hmm.
Part of me wonders that some of Intel's strengths in the past have been their ability to fab their own things, but that's not the reality because they're using TSMC for Core Ultra. Now, maybe that because they're not making money on these is pushing them not to sell a bunch of them. Maybe.
I'm kind of wondering if they're running into yield issues like we're seeing with Nvidia. And as Tom on Broken Silicon reported, AMD may also be seeing. Not necessarily to the extent that Nvidia is seeing with
Let's
Blackwell,
see.
but um, that would explain why we see such a shortage of
Well,
285Ks and everything else
I
showing
mean,
up in the market.
they're different because like TSMC and the 285 are using 3 nanometer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Nvidia is on 4 nanometer with Blackwell. Now, I don't know if what um, Navi 48 is. I'd have to take a look and see what that is. I don't know if it's the same, but I do believe, in fact, I'm guessing that it's a different node altogether. I'd have to look it up. I don't know off the top of my head,
Yeah,
but it is a very interesting piece to think about because um, there is going to be some differences here.
for sure, for sure. And I don't think we're seeing AMD on the 9070 and 9070 XT side showing quite as much of an issue with their yields as everyone else is. I think it's there might be some yield issues going on there that we might see crop up longer term, but as it stands, I mean, most of the supply issues that I think we're seeing from AMD are coming from people just going out and buying cards and scalpers going out and buying cards and driving market prices wild just because Nvidia is not delivering.
Mm-hmm.
And what the cause there is anyone's guess because Nvidia has been very tight-lipped about what exactly is going on. I think we can be pretty confident that there are yield issues going on because of what we're seeing with the missing ROPS. So, I think for me, the big question is where do we go from here? Because, if we circling back to the core of the topic, um, does anyone really want Intel's IP right now? I mean, older IP, sure, the x86 stuff and the x64 stuff, basically everything up to Arrow Lake. Um, but I don't think anybody's going to want what's in the 285K because it doesn't perform. It's every benchmark puts it behind the 12900K. Well,
Well,
not
and the
every
problem
benchmark, but
is
the
that
most of
from
them.
a the problem is that even then you've got some real concerns about that generation. You know that that's the most you're going to get out of that generation. So
Mm-hmm.
they had to pivot, and the problem is that what they pivoted to is slower
Yeah,
and less desirable. So um, it does ask some really good questions about um, what's going to happen here. So I don't
yeah,
know.
yeah. I could see potentially a consortium buying Intel, or just Broadcom or just Nvidia buying them. I mean, Nvidia I think would be the harder sell buying solo because that's potential regulatory issues. They already ran into that
Mhm.
with ARM. Um, and they're still moving forward with ARM. They're still working on ARM stuff, but uh, I think with with the exception of this huge stumble they ran into with Blackwell, which is funny because Intel and Nvidia basically did the same thing this generation. They
Yeah.
they released very very lackluster parts, and on Intel on the CPU side and Blackwell on the Nvidia side, or graphics card side, um, and I think that's going to be problematic for them in the long run because you flub a launch, you release a part that just doesn't do the job, and you've got at least a year, at maybe 2 years before you can release a product to fix that. And I would hate to be an NVIDIA engineer over the last couple months because you're probably working huge numbers of hours to get the next design done so you can get silicon into the lab. Because
Well, I mean,
it, yeah, it's not a good proposition.
I mean, right now, either one of two things: either TSMC has a problem with their 4 nanometer node, Nvidia has a problem with their design, or a mixture of the two.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, as much as people want to think, oh, we'll just go to tape it back to 3 nanometer, um, that is not easy. And I don't know if to be honest, this is Blackwell's probably going to just be the version of what it is, because the other half of this, how are you going to do more power and try to do a refresh?
Yeah.
You're already at the max power of the cable, and you've got issues with the cable and power, so you really don't have the ability to go higher. So the only way to do this more efficiently, and unless you're going to redesign it, I think that they're kind of already at the cap at the 5090 for Blackwell. I don't see really the ability to get this any different. Possibly, but I don't know. I mean, I sort of think you might be at the limit of the 5080 and the 70 series. Like, what are you going to do? A 5070 Ti super? I mean, come on.
Well, yeah, I mean the 5090 is a cut down Blackwell. It's not the full chip. Um the I forget what Nvidia calls their consumer line now. I want to say H100, but I'm probably wrong on that. So the full size Blackwell is going to be coming out as a server part. And if they're having a combination of yield and design issues, which I think that's probably the likely culprit here, I don't think people are going to want to buy Blackwell based CPUs for server unless there's some significant guarantees for supply, because they're not going out to Micro Center to buy one GPU. They're going straight to Nvidia and saying, hey, send me 1,000 of these, just like Elon did with his what was it, 1,000 GPU setup that they deployed in like 3 weeks from design to completion. I mean, yeah, it's crazy. And I think it is entirely possible that the yield issues are a problem, because I just looked up, according to Tech Power Up, the process node for the process node for the RX 9070 XT is 5 nanometer, running on TSMC's N4P FinFET. So sort of 4 nanometer, but not all the way 4 nanometer. And, if they're able to dodge the yield issues and don't have any major design issues, then we could see AMD, with their aggressive pricing that they started out with, help them capture the market share. But there has been a lot of pricing shenanigans. So let's move on to that, because you were doing some shopping recently and found some weird stuff.
So really interesting. If you look at the AMD stuff, you had a bunch. Every manufacturer had a MSRP card, at $599. Okay. What's interesting is that like, and then everyone had an overclocked card. So for instance, I was able and lucky to have a Micro Center close by. So I was able to get an MSRP gigabyte card,
I hate you for that,
599.
by the way.
It is an OC model. Okay. It wasn't for me, it was for a friend who, shall be
Sure,
nameless.
sure. Buying
Taco.
buying cards for friends that aren't me. I see
No,
how it is. No,
I offered, you said no.
I know. Yeah, it wasn't in the budget
But
for me, but it may be
but
soon.
so I got that, and now that same card from Micro Center is now listed not 599 but 779.
hmm That's crazy.
$180 increase. Now,
Boy,
some
that's
of the
that's like what
cards,
my landlord tried to do to me.
I mean, sort of like what we're seeing, and it's very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Um, so all I have to say is that um first, I do believe that there are many, and I don't know where this, I do not believe Micro Center is jacking up the price. I do believe this goes back to the AIBs. And I think a lot of this goes to the AIBs to I think there's some truth to say that the AIBs are not doing a very good job at
hmm
trying to keep these prices down.
Yeah. Well, I
Um,
suspect part of what's happened here, because AMD had initially well before the launch told the manufacturers, hey, we're going to price this card here. And they were selling those cards to retailers, and the retailers were paying, you know, whatever the price was. AMD then came out and was like, yeah, we're going to drop the price by $200 or to whatever, to 549, 599. And typically in those scenarios, AMD would rebate that price change to the manufacturer, and the manufacturer is supposed to then rebate that price change to places like Micro Center, to the retailer, which is why we were seeing those cards at MSRP, at the intended price. I suspect what's happened is either AMD is not sending the rebates, or the AIBs are just pocketing the rebates and not passing them on to the retailer as they're intended to.
well, and I think what we're
So,
seeing in Europe is where the retailers are, we sold it. Oh yeah. By the way, it's $100 more, $150 more. Like
mhm,
I firmly believe, but I also believe that some of those rebates are going to have some limitations
yep.
on how many units. Now, the question comes is, is the 599 really a card? Now, I do believe this goes back to AMD. Why isn't there a reference card?
Well, the stated reason that I had heard was that they didn't want to compete with their AIBs this generation.
Well, but the AIBs are, and there's grumblings within AMD that they're not happy that there's not very many um, MSRP cards.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the simple solution is if then compete with them and sell the cards at MSRP.
Yep.
Now, you know, but with that being said, there are some. Okay, so ASRock has one, Power Color has one, but the other one, Sapphire, I believe, has one. Um, XFX does not have one, as far as I'm aware of. Um,
I think
Gigabyte and Asus do not.
there's yeah, their Swift and their Quicksilver are not MSRP.
No, and
So
that's the base
yeah,
model. Yeah.
the Swift
So
is the base model.
the honest truth is I know graphics cards are really expensive because you cannot get MSRP almost anything now with any manufacturer.
Yeah.
So there is the question will be is if I flood the market, I almost feel like it has to get to the point where you've flooded the market so much that you've got so many pieces that you can't like that there's not demand to buy them at these higher inflated rates
Mm-hmm.
for some of these prices to come down. Um, and I don't know. What's interesting is that other than that initial like dump of 15, 20, 50, 100,000, 100,000 units in the States, we haven't seen restocking yet. Now I'm actively looking. Now here's the other half we have to keep in mind. Okay. The 79, the 9070 XT is on par with, between a 7900 XT and an XTX. If you already have a high end 6000 series, or like for instance, if you had a 7900 GRE,
Yeah.
I don't know necessarily, unless you're going to pick up ray tracing and your goal on that is to pick up ray tracing. I don't know from a rasterization if there's a ton of benefit to go out and do an upgrade. But with that being said, I will say that video cards on the used marketplace, people are doing dumb things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's possible that you might be able to get a really, really good deal on a card only because you can sell yours for so much.
Right.
The loaded question comes back to is that will you be able to card? Now, if you don't have a micro center near you, you have zero chance. You have not a hope or a prayer of getting an MSRP card.
Yeah.
The scalpers are legit. And I really, really wish that Newegg, Amazon, B&H, I really wish that some of these people would do a better job at trying to stop people from scalping these cards.
Yeah.
I would love, but
Yeah, short of doing what Linus did a few years ago, where he did his verified actual gamer program when he got a stock of cards. Um, I don't see a way you could do that. You know, you have to vet all your customers, and that's going to be a lot of a. Is Cortana talking to you now?
I was setting up this thing.
Good
I'm
grief.
sorry.
Cortana, shush. Yeah, I mean, the only way you're going to really be able to do it is to do some kind of verification program where, you make sure that the person who's buying it is the person who's going to keep it. And the other thing too is I think a lot of these the manufacturers need to write into their warranty clearly that if you do not buy it directly from a retailer or it is not a verified gift, and like where the manufacturer calls the original purchaser and is like, hey, did you buy this as a gift for so and so?
Here's the problem. I mean, okay, so let's talk about my brother who does realistically want a 5090.
Yeah,
Unless you have a local store,
your host.
see that's the problem, and that's what hacks me off.
Mm-hmm.
Is that you go there and say, "Oh, you're not going to have any warranty work." Who does that help? It
Well, I
only
mean,
helps
it helps the manufacturer.
the manufacturer. Like what? Like I wish more manufacturers would go out on a limb and say, you know what, we're going to sell direct to a single consumer, and you register. I think Zotac did a really cool thing
Mm-hmm.
when they tried to stop a lot of the uh, this, where they said, okay, you had to be active in Discord. I think that's awesome. I
Yeah,
love that.
yeah. I've got a crazy idea. Video cards get a 50% discount if you show your identification when you purchase them.
How does that help?
Uh, because if you buy more than a handful of cards with the same ID, they just say no. Two, I would say 2-3 cards would be a reasonable max, and
I think the trying to limit that, because the problem is, okay, I could go get 3 from Micro Center, I could get 3 from eBay. I mean, I go get 5 from Best Buy, like, and I don't know. I feel like there's something that be said about trying to do everything you can to get these into gamers rather than scalpers' hands.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a shame. And I really wish there was a way to stop and block the bots. Like, you know what? If you're going to profit from this and you're going to be just as quick and you're going to be doing it, but the bots purchasing has got to end. And I have zero sympathy for any of these bots that buy pictures of 5090s. Zero. I think that's the best thing ever, because it's like, if you're dumb enough to go on eBay and spend, $1,800 for a picture of one of these cards, it's like, you know what? You deserve to kind of get hosed.
Yeah. I tried to do one of those listings a few years ago with the 3000 series shortage when the scalping was going nuts, and I got my eBay account banned for a little while. They're like, "Oh yeah, we thought you were trying to scam people." And I'm like, I said right on the listing it was a drawing. It's like, come on, like, what the heck? So yeah. And combating the bots, I think, is going to be the biggest deal, because the scalpers that go out to a Micro Center or manually buy stuff on Amazon or wherever are going to keep doing it. The idea would be to slow down the automation, and that's going to require automation. In fact, that might be a good problem for AI to tackle, if they haven't been doing that already. Because I think part of the problem too is that the retailers make so little margin on these things that the value proposition isn't there, even if it would create a huge amount of goodwill, and I don't know. But I think on that bombshell, we will call it a show for this evening. So thank you all for watching. We do appreciate you giving us a little bit of your time out of the day. And remember to like and comment and subscribe, and do all the algorithmic goodness down the doobly-doo below. And until next time, have fun storming the castle.
Take care, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night.